In 2020, I quit my job at JPMorgan and went all in on a business that was even more boring than banking. And in 2024, that same business is projected to do over $6 million in revenue. As someone who has sold the dream of working my way up the corporate ladder, it didn't take me long to realize that this dream was exactly that. But what this job did do is allow me to make more money than a hedge fund manager while spending more time with my 3 kids, knowing that their college is fully paid for. My name is Ben Kelly, and this is my story. From the youngest of ages, I always thought that if you want to be successful in this life, you're going to have to go into finance. Besides making money and besides making my clients happy, there was no other purpose to what I was doing. And I started to put together a plan. I was able to get my first deal done. Growing up in New York, many of my family members worked in Wall Street. And so from the youngest of ages, I always thought that if you want to be successful in this life, you're going to have to go into finance. Fast forward, I'm in college, I'm graduating, I'm becoming a second lieutenant in the Army as a military intelligence officer, got married to my girlfriend of 10 years, and was super excited to start my journey. After 6 years of being in active duty, I decided that I was going to get out of the military. And it was one of the most frightening times of my life. I had no idea what I was going to do post-Army. The skills I had learned were great on the battlefield, but they were not good when it came to a boardroom or being any way conducive to jumping into corporate America. So I decided that go back to what I always thought was my ticket to success, which is learn about finance. So I went out and got an MBA. And as I was transitioning out, I pushed hard on every single avenue that I had available to me. Turns out at that time, JPMorgan, the largest bank in the US, was hiring military officers to come into their program, and especially into the private bank. I took my shot, was able to get in on that program. Next thing I knew, my wife and I were both flying out to Scottsdale, Arizona, where I joined the private bank. I thought my dream had come true. I was making a good 6-figure salary, I was getting fat bonuses, and it was an easy job. All I had to do was help people bring money into the bank, make sure they were happy, and make sure that they were getting the return that they were promised. After 2 years of doing this, I realized that this was not all it was cracked up to be. Besides making money, and besides making my clients happy, there was no other purpose to what I was doing. I was searching for what was going to be that key that could get me excited again about waking up every day and providing for my family. I specifically remember one day where Scott, who was someone who was one of my managers, he was about 15 years ahead of me. I saw that he went into our director's office asking for a few weeks off for vacation during the summer to go spend with his family. And he was denied because there was a big event coming up. Some of Scott's clients were going to be there, and it was essential that Scott would be there to make sure that those clients would bring more money into the bank. And it was at this point that I realized here's a man super faithful to the company, did everything right for 15 years, and then he gets denied when he asked to go on a 2-week vacation with his family. I realized right then and there that this was not what I signed up for. This is not something that I could see myself spending the next 20, 30 years of my life grinding away for somebody else so that I can walk into an office and actually take off 2 weeks for a vacation and they tell me no. So it was at that point I started to really look at what made our clients successful. In this part of the bank, to even join the private bank, you need at least $10 million in liquid net worth. So these were super wealthy individuals that were super successful. And I started to realize that there was a couple key factors that were consistent among all of them. One, they were high performers, which is nothing crazy. The second was that most of them owned businesses, and a very high percentage of those who own businesses were continuing to acquire them. And I would see a client go out and acquire another business and see their net worth double or triple in the span of a 12-month period. One of the clients I remember that did this the best ended up selling his portfolio of car dealerships to Warren Buffett for $2.1 billion. And this is where it hit me. Here was a guy who didn't even have a college education, focused on acquiring car dealerships over 20 years, and he sold that portfolio for not just life-changing money, but for generational changing money for his kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids, on and on and on. And so that is what planted the seed for I'm going to do exactly what they're doing. But I had a problem. I didn't have a lot of money saved up. I didn't have any expertise in going out and buying businesses, but I was going to do everything I could to learn those exact steps. So next thing I do is I went out and I found books, one of them being Buy Then Build by Walker Dybel. Went on YouTube, looked at what few videos there were out there that were giving some advice about how to go and acquire businesses. And I started to put together a plan. The next year, while I was working at JPMorgan, I was able to get my first deal done. Now that first deal was a software company. And the way I found the software company was actually prospecting on LinkedIn. I was prospecting on LinkedIn, reaching out to business owners, and the business owner that I was able to reach and connect with also happened to be an Army veteran. And so we connected on that. And when I realized what his business was about, it was still pretty small, only doing about $150,000 in annual recurring revenue. But I knew that what I brought to the table could help scale this company. But again, remember my number one problem. I didn't have money, and I didn't have a way of going at that point, going out to a bank and realizing all the different tools that are available to acquire businesses. So I went to him and I made a deal. I said, I'll come on board as a partner. I'm going to be getting a big chunk of equity in this company, and I'm going to work on growing this company, building out the team, building out our processes, and raising money. Because at that point, I had built up a pretty solid network of wealthy individuals. And I was going to go raise money so that we can take this company from 150K in ARR to over 1.5 million in ARR in the next 12 months. And that's exactly what we did. I was able to come on and get a minority stake in this company for $5,000 out of pocket and just putting in the sweat equity over the next 12 months to go from 150K in annual revenue to over 1.5. And during that time, I went from making zero when I first started to now making over $180,000 a year. Up until that point, I had tried every different startup that you could imagine. I was trying to do day trading. I was trying to do faceless YouTube channels. I even tried to do e-com. And while I did make some money in some of those endeavors, nothing was able to replace my main W-2 income, which was the goal from the start. The goal was to get more of my time to where I could spend it with my wife, doing the things I love to do, instead of being at the office doing what my clients wanted to do. As I was getting more into business acquisition and learning about the space, I came across this statistic. 95% of startups fail within the first 5 years of their launch. Now, the inverse is true when it comes to business acquisition. 95% of businesses succeed after being acquired 5 years later. So if you're looking at this from just a perspective of what do I have the best chance to do to make the most amount of money, if we're looking at the possibilities and we're looking at the risk level, business acquisition is the clear front runner in being able to do a strategy that is going to make life-changing money on one deal. So now let's go back to the software company that I acquired. After a year, 10xing the revenue and being able to go from $0 to $180,000 in cash flow to myself, I started to think, how can I repeat this process? Now, before I could do that, I needed to extradite myself from the day-to-day of this software company where I was currently acting as a CFO, and then go out and spend the time and the energy to do more acquisitions. So over the next 3 months, I started to hire other people, replace many of the day-to-day jobs that I had, to the point where I was only spending 1 hour a week in this software company, which then freed me up to go out and do multiple acquisitions. My second acquisition was going to be a web design company. Now, in this web design company, this also was the structure of a consulting for equity type deal, where I went in, found the company, took a 25% equity stake in it, and in exchange for, I would show them how to grow their business the same way that I did with the software company. This time, I came in with zero money out of my pocket. Now, fast forward 6 months after that acquisition, I was making about $40,000 that year from an acquisition that cost me nothing and cost me an extra 30 minutes every 2 weeks on a call to talk with their team on the strategies to grow their business. This is where I realized that I could scale the strategy to 7 figures. Fast forward a couple years and I acquire an ATM route, nail salon, an accounting firm, a horizontal drilling company, marine upholstery business that services luxury yachts in Miami. And I realized after doing all these different industries that the strategy that I was implementing in growing this growing book of businesses was something that was not only special to me, but this was repeatable, and it's something that I could show other people how to do as well. So after my second acquisition, I was now making enough to where I was able to fully leave my JPMorgan job, cut my W-2, walk out the door, and never look back. 4 years later, I'm 6xing the amount of money that I made while I was working at JPMorgan, while working half the amount of hours. For those of you out there who think you need an MBA or finance experience to go out there and successfully acquire a business, I'm here to tell you that you don't. Most of what I've done over the last 5 years has almost nothing to do with the previous experience that I had. It has everything to do with learning the strategies and the steps to take in order to identify and make sure that the business you're buying is going to be the right one for your lifestyle and your goals. And I know this goes against all the conventional wisdom out there that you need to have all this crazy experience and background to do what private equity groups do on a large scale. And it's just not true. There was no good information out there about how to go and acquire businesses. I started talking about it on Twitter, now X. After posting about this for a few months on Twitter, I had so many people reaching out to me asking for help. I started to take on a few clients, working with them one-on-one. And as I started working with them, I saw people that had no backgrounds, not even in finance, nothing that had involved business or MBAs. They were making headway and getting deals done in acquiring their first business. And at that point, I realized that this was a skill that I could go out there and I can teach others to do that was truly going to change people's lives. At first, I questioned myself, was this something that I was just naturally good at? Was I lucky? But the more that I brought on people, teaching them exactly what I had done, the exact step-by-step strategy, and seeing the results that they were getting in a much faster timeline than me. My first acquisition took me over 18 months. months. And these people that I were taking on were getting it done in 6 to 9 months on average. So I knew after the first couple of people went through this strategy that I had taught them and they were successful in acquiring their first business, that this was something that I could go and I could bring to more and more people and get better and better results. And these successful students that I had did not have anywhere near the background that I did. We have a teacher that was able to acquire a business in Myrtle Beach that's making over $300,000 in cash flow in her first year. We have a marketing manager who bought a $4 million agency and in his first year alone is looking to cash flow over $1 million. We have a professional basketball player who decided that he wanted to get a second stream of income coming in as he's looking to retire in the next few years. And now in his first deal, he's looking to make over $250,000 in cash flow in the next 6 months on that business. What most people don't realize until it's too late is that time is your most valuable asset. And it was really important to me as I was growing this business portfolio that I was maintaining the amount of time that I had with my family, with my wife, doing the things that we love to do. So as I acquired now 7 businesses, doing over $6 million in revenue, making over $850,000 in cash flow from these businesses, what the next step was extraditing myself from the day-to-day so that I can do the things I love to do. Part of that was finding the right GMs to be able to run those businesses. Now, sometimes those GMs already worked at the business and we were just promoting them the second that we took over the business. Sometimes they were the seller themselves who, after receiving the payment for us buying that company, decided to stay on and be the GM with a nice salary, which is always the best option because now the transition is super smooth and we're able to fully do that acquisition and move on to the next within a few months' time. But by learning how to do that, learning how to acquire these cash flowing, boring businesses that are super stable, finding someone who can run the day-to-day, you're able to rinse and repeat this process every 3 to 6 months. And that is where the strategy becomes not just one deal to make you 6 figures in cash flow, but multiple deals to make you over 7 figures in cash flow, which is the goal. And one of the things that still blows my mind about business acquisition and why it's not talked about enough is how lucrative just one deal is. In my group, in my students that I teach on how to do the strategy, we don't talk about any deals, we don't focus any time on any deal that's not going to make over 6 figures in cash flow in the next 12 months post-acquisition. We don't even spend a second looking at deals they're not going to make over 100% return in year one. And when comparing that to other industries where people are happy to make 10, 15, 20% return on their money, it's not even close. Business acquisition is truly building wealth. And there's a saying out there that says that most millionaires were made through real estate. And that's true. Most people that are millionaires did make it through property valuation from the real estate that they own. But most billionaires out there are made through business acquisition. Buying businesses is what truly makes you wealth, but the type of wealth that becomes generational wealth. Conventional wisdom always teaches that we need to work 50, 60 hours a week. We need to put our 401k match and hope that by the time that we're getting to retirement age, that 401k account is fat enough to where we're able to leave our full-time jobs and live off the pittance that it's going to be paying us out for the rest of our 30, 40 years that we have left on this earth. When you look at that model and that what all of us are taught that is our ticket to freedom, and you realize that everything you've been told is a lie, that is not how you go out there and build wealth that's going to be able to give you the time and the freedom that you're looking for. When you realize that all of that was a lie, then you start to wonder what else is a lie. What else out there have you been taught that is actually the opposite of what you should be doing? And that was the realization I came to, thinking that I was only going to be able to make my money through investing in the market or being super conservative and throwing my money into a 401k or putting my 529 plan for my kids so that when they were college age, they had money set aside for them in college. Whereas now I make enough money on a month-to-month basis to where just the cash flow from 1 month can pay for that college. That is the difference between thinking just one generation, putting into a 401k account, or multi-generation, which is building wealth through business acquisition. Most people think that there's a compromise, meaning if you want to make a lot of money, that means a lot of your time has to be given away to whatever that enterprise is, which means if you want to make the $500,000 salary, you're not going to spend any time with your family that you want to do. You're going to be missing games, you're going to be missing graduations, missing birthday parties, missing all the parts of life that have the most meaning. When you realize that is not the only path to make life-changing money, there are ways to go out there to do one acquisition, make just as much as a full-time anesthesiologist, but still have time to do the baseball games, do the birthday parties, go and take your kids to the park in the middle of the day because that's what you want to do. That's when the light bulb really goes on in people's heads and they realize that this is something that is not only going to change their lives for the better, but it's something that they can do. One of the reasons why this opportunity is so important to start now is we're in the middle of the largest generational shift in American history. We have the baby boomer generation, 75 million people strong, that are retiring over this next decade. So in the next 10 years, 13 million businesses need to exchange hands. That represents over $15 trillion. By doing this and learning these strategies over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, by understanding this opportunity and the strategy to go out there and buy these boring businesses that need to exchange hands over the next 10 years is what is going to allow you to take a piece of that $15 trillion pie. There's really two paths if you want want to go down the route of learning business acquisition. First path is you do what I did. You take 18 months, you make every mistake known to man, you waste over $10,000, and you hope that your first deal ends up being a good one. Or you can work with someone like me, who's done this now 7 times myself and have over 60 closings in the past 12 months with my students, and you can take that as your first step. Now, I have a program called Acquisition Ace that will hold your hand in helping you acquire your first business in the next 6 months. It's simple, but it's not going to be easy. It is going to be 6 months of intentional hard work. There is no getting rich quick here. But for those who've stayed the course, they've seen incredible results over the next 12 months where they're able to replace their full-time W-2 salary. If you want to find out more about how I can help you in buying your first business in the next 6 months, check out the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.